Hello, everyone. Yasmin, would you like us to kick off?
Yeah, sure.
Right. So I'm going to switch over to you, David, to do a word from our sponsors, and we'll get kicked off.
Good afternoon, evening, morning, everyone. David Cannon here, and welcome to this webinar on digital transformation. And we're going to be looking at some ways to get your digital transformation program working really well. Just before we get into that, though, I'd like to just share a word from our sponsor. Good eLearning is the company that is sponsoring this webinar, and I've had the pleasure to be able to work with them for the past few months, preparing their course for the Digital and IT Strategy program. And I honestly have found them to be an absolute pleasure to work with, and I think they have a great product. And yeah, I think the slide really speaks a lot to their capabilities. Super nice team of people, and just a great professional product. So I encourage you to go and check them out after this webinar. Thank you for that, and thank you, Good eLearning, for hosting us.
Indeed.
So yeah, let's go on to the next slide. I'm going to introduce us very briefly. I'm David Cannon, and I was one of the lead editors for the Digital and IT Strategy book in Itil 4. Joining me is Richard Lukaku, who was one of the co-authors, and just an incredibly valuable person to have on that team. Richard has had quite a bit of experience in this space, and in fact, he wrote his master's thesis on digital transformation, and he brings some really good perspectives on the subject. So this is our agenda today. I'm going to kick it off, then I'm going to hand over to Richard, and we'll switch a little bit between the two of us. So the agenda today is, first of all, before we can discuss exactly how to get your digital transformation program working efficiently and effectively, we really have to understand what digital transformation is. There is just so much misinformation out there. So many people are calling things digital transformation that are neither digital nor transformative. But it seems to be a cool buzzword, and so we label a project with that name, and off we go. And it doesn't quite give us the results that we need, and people are a little bit disappointed. And it's no wonder, because we didn't actually define what it was that we were going to achieve in terms of digital transformation. We misapplied the term very often. So I think one of the first steps, even before we get to the 5 quick steps, is really to get a clear understanding of what we mean and what kind of images we create and expectations we create when we use the term digital transformation. And then we're going straight into the 5 actions. Let's go on to the next slide.
Right. So some of the common perceptions about digital transformation, that, as David was pointing out, really passionate about this topic. And many of you on the webinar are either in organizations that have established formal transformation projects or are in the process of exploring the topic and running an initiative or two. And many of you, I'm sure, have been exposed to some of the projects that are labeled digital transformation, such as things like automating a process, modernizing your IT, or one of my favorites is migrating to the cloud. We've got a cloud-first strategy, therefore we are digitally transforming. And using DevOps, Agile, and Lean also, that sort of makes us digital transformation leaders, and we're really going to the market with a really good digital transformation strategy. And just before really honing in on this, a really great quote that comes from a man named George Westerman, who was one of the authors of a book called Leading Digital, which is, I think, a catalyst for the entire movement of digital transformation. He stated that digital transformation, when done right, is like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. But when it's not done correctly, it's more like a very fast caterpillar. So we will go through what this all means and all the nuances of it. But I'm sure these are all things that typically people have been labeling as digital transformation initiatives. It's not necessarily true. There may be elements of a bigger context, which we'll be talking about. But I think something that's really important to discuss before we even get to fleshing that out is, why digital transformation? Where did this all come from? And it's all built around something called the digital economy. Now, what is that? I'm sure not very long ago, you would remember going and to a brick and mortar type organization to get products and services. So I remember buying a cell phone. I had to go to the store to go and speak to a cell phone specialist to help me get a contract, to help me, go through all these hurdles of finance checks and all these things and waiting. I remember taking 2 to 3 hours just to get a new cell phone. Going and purchasing clothes or groceries, going to see a doctor, going to rent a DVD, if we still remember those days. But as I'm sure you've all experienced, especially in the world we live in today, a lot of these things can now be done online. You're getting apps that help you do this, and we're getting far better experiences as well. For example, when you're buying clothes, there's websites like thread.com, which tailors a whole list of clothing very specific to your size, your weight, your characteristics, your tastes, and you just pick what you want off the selections they give you, and they send them to you, and they fit perfectly. No effort hunting through a store for things that fit and things that don't fit. For makeup, there are mobile apps available which now pick your skin tone and make suggestions on which makeup to use, and then apply it to your face through augmentation to help you find the best shade. And then you can order that shade from the app. Much easier than going and putting actual makeup on your face and even costing money for the organization, having to do all these samples. Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon, streaming, Xbox Live for playing online and playing games with friends. I mean, we are spoilt for choice in this new digital economy. And it really is just the means of being able to interact with and engage online on websites, apps, and other sort of means to help you really get more exciting and more tailored offerings. Now, for companies who are still relying very much on their brick and mortar stores for revenue every day, they would be losing a significant amount of revenue. It's been seen. We've seen the stores closing down around us. And, companies have just opened a web page to try and get online. They're trying to engage with their customers. But for example, a clothing store might just post its catalog. It's not necessarily giving it a competitive edge to compete against the likes of thread.com or any other website that's got these really tailored and specific experiences that they're giving to their customers. So this is what has put this demand on organizations to come up with new experiences using new types of technologies to provide new types of immersive experiences for customers. And a lot of competitors are doing this really quickly, and you're having to move really fast because technology is changing and people are coming up with new ideas and new applications of this technology, and you're having to transform very quickly to keep up. I mean, how are you going to transform your logistics chain to keep up? How are you going to do your marketing in this new economy? How are you going to use augmented digital experiences on your physical products? These are all the kinds of things that are putting pressures on organizations today to do what we call digital transformation. Over to you, David.
It's just this is what you're experiencing now is we're in the middle of a digital transformation, and let me just take this side note just to cover one aspect of digital transformation is that it has to do with innovation, and we're going to be talking about a lot of innovative things in a moment, and how organizations need to change to become more innovative and more used to change. But one of the things you'll see as you go through this program of digital transformation is that you'll be dealing with highly innovative technologies or highly innovative solutions. Even organizations who are using something that comes from somewhere else will find it to be quite disruptive. Now, the thing with innovation is that in the early stages of innovation, organizations and customers will find it novel, exciting, and they're prepared to put up with a fair amount of dysfunction within that solution. Over time, though, it's really important that you're able to become better and better at operating that solution. And so part of the transformation is moving from something that is novel and exciting and moving to something that is more regular, routine, operational. Those two environments those two cultures need to coexist. You're constantly moving between something that is highly innovative and something that is highly well controlled and operated consistently. So we're right in the middle of this now. So yeah, slides are moving backwards and forwards. All right, so I'm on the slide which says what this means.
That's right.
Right, and so what this actually means in terms of digital transformation is that the rules are changing. Now, we've been changing digitally for decades, really. I mean, we've been automating, we've been using IT, we've been using digital technology for some years now. And over time, this has been transformative, but it's been an evolutionary process. However, when we start using the latest generation of digital tools and technology, what you'll find is that the rules start to change. So let me give you an example. Digital marketing, for example, and from a generation where marketing meant you had a department that created a product or defined the product, forecast the demand for that product, went and did some market research, put some adverts out there to drive demand, and then interacted with the sales team to make sure that that was effective. Well, in digital marketing, you have an entirely different way of approaching marketing. Not because the basic concept of marketing has changed, but because the way you do it has changed completely. We have social media. The way you advertise on social media is completely different to the way we used to advertise on TV, radio, billboards. It's completely different. The kind of customers and the way they understand marketing messages are very, very different than they used to be just 10 years ago. So the rules change when you start using this digital technology, and a lot of that is because consumers now have control over the technology themselves. You're not using centralized technology to deliver services and products. You're sharing digital products. You're sharing cell phone apps. You're sharing data between consumers and your organization, and it's very much a shared a kind of experience when we're working using digital technology. And it's not unique just to the organization. Digital technology actually changes the way society works. For example, just think about dating, right? And again, I remember back to the days when I was dating, it was very much a real world kind of thing. There was no such thing as online. I mean, even to use the phone was really difficult. And there were rules around how you did it. Well, dating today, it happens online. It is initiated online. Sometimes, dates go on for several weeks online before people meet face to face. And then that introduces dynamics into that meeting, which are very different to what it used to be. The whole rules around dating, around how society is working, about how people do their shopping, about how people market and consume marketing, they're all different. And it's because of this technology that's emerged. So what digital transformation means is that if you want to be successful, you have to understand those new rules. And you have to change the way your organization works, because your organization has to live by those same rules. You can't say, well, we're gonna bring a whole brand new set of products to the market. Well, we're going to deliver them and produce them using our old standard operating procedures. It doesn't work that way. People in the organization have to play by the same rules as the people that we're selling to, the people that we're working with, the partners, the cloud service providers, etc. It's a new set of rules. So that's one of the big, and somebody asked the question before the webinar, what's one of the biggest sources of failure for this? One of the biggest sources of failure for digital transformation is that we think we can do it without changing the way we work, without changing the rules. You have to change the rules. If you don't change the rules, you're going to, and if you don't live by these new rules, you're really going to find it difficult to transform yourselves digitally. Now, you can, of course, use digital technology without changing the rules, but one of two things is going to happen. That your organization is going to change. If you continue to use them and you force the use of the digital tools, the culture of the organization will change. The problem is you won't know what that culture will become. You can't predict it. It's just going to change in very unpredictable ways, and it's very difficult once the culture has changed to get it back on the track that you want it to be. The second thing that can happen is that the organization is not going to be effective because it's trying to use technology, but it's trying to use it in ways that are outdated. So you got to get the recipe right. And I think, Richard, this is your formula. Digital transformation equals technology plus customer experience plus leadership plus strategy plus operations. Miss any of those out, and you're going to find it very, very difficult to be transformative and to deploy digital solutions in the way you need to. Okay, let's go to that next slide.
Right, so I'm going to bring it all up so that we don't have any delays, and I'll just sort of talk over it before getting started. So what we're really going to be doing now is unpacking those elements that we just highlighted. But before, you'll see it come up in a minute. It's a big diagram. It's a fairly complex diagram. And I don't want anyone to get too excited. This isn't a framework or a methodology you can go and buy in a book somewhere. It's just a picture with a bunch of ideas to help you contextualize the discussions today. And it's been drawn from a lot of the original works from Leading Digital, from George Westerman, Didier Bonnet, and Andrew McAfee. And they've released new work to update, since 2014, update the practices and the elements. And I've updated it accordingly. So hoping you can see the slides. What you're really looking at are the main key pillars of digital transformation. Call them capabilities, call them whatever. I like to call them pillars because they're fairly high level and abstract. And then you'd be looking at a lot of the elements that make up those pillars. And I'm going to just focus on each one very briefly. So customer centricity and experience is an extremely important, potentially central pillar. And here, as an organization, we're needing to learn how we're going to design our customer experiences. How do we collect intelligence about our customers and understand their behaviors at a very analytical, data-centric sort of fashion? How do we draw deep insights in patterns on behaviors that we can identify and understand, so we can provide better value to them using our products and our services and ensuring those are aligned? How do we ensure we are emotionally connecting with our customers? This is now a big thing. If you are making an emotional connection with your customer and co-creating value with them, you're likely going to hold on to them. It's very easy for a customer to switch to another provider in a digital economy. There's nothing really tying them to any one provider. And so when you lose a customer or a consumer, it's going to be very difficult to try and convince them to come back to your platform or your service or your product. So getting those emotional attachments and that experience and that relationship is of paramount importance. And you need to be able to design that experience through things like journey mapping, going and researching your customers, creating personas using service design thinking, techniques like that. Operational excellence is the next pillar, and that really focuses on our operations and how do we automate our operations to facilitate standardization, speed, and orchestration, so that we're able to connect our organization in a very fast and efficient fashion, and have it orchestrated so that you're able to get your logistics to run seamlessly with very little human intervention. Now, I just want to make a point there. We're not saying get rid of the humans and replace it with machines. What will end up happening is people working in those logistics chains will end up having far more important work to do, because they're no longer going to be doing mundane, boring work. You're going to start enabling them to do more valuable work, which will thus take the company even further. So it's about automation of mundane, repetitive tasks to enable people to do more interesting, more valuable work. And then we also need to make sure that we're getting information in operations about the performance of our operations, of how things are working, so that we can improve performance in general, and of course increase innovation at an operational efficiency level. Strategy and innovation is another pillar, and there you need to be looking at how you're going to enhance your service and products experiences through additional digital augmentation. And what that is if you've got a physical product, it's adding a bunch of devices to it and making it more of a digital experience. So for example, Whirlpool has a washer and dryer that has embedded devices that send information to Whirlpool, and what they do is they monitor the performance of your unit, and they come and arrange the servicing and enhancements on it so that you get the best experience from their products. It also gives them insights into where their production can improve and where parts are failing the most, and how they can tighten up the quality of their products as well. Leadership and governance is another area that is very important, and that's really making sure we have the right sponsorship, the right vision, the right governance, and making sure that our workforce is enabled to actually deliver effectively. I mean, to be innovative digitally means that we need people with the skill set. They need to understand technology. They need to know how, what kind of emerging technology is out there, how to use it, and how to apply it to business scenarios. And organizational change is going to be another component that is vitally important because, as we've mentioned, we have to change the way we work. And the only way we can do that is by understanding user behavior and supporting and nurturing people through the process of change so that you get the desired behaviors from your workforce and ensuring that they're all bought into this new vision and mission, and that they are absolutely customer centric and believe in doing this right. And then your digital platform, the bottom piece is really our IT, right? And it's your core is really your back office and front office. So it's making sure that your technical backbone, if you will, is highly available, it's stable, and it provides the expected value that it's been built for. And then you've got your external facing services like your websites and all the things that your customers use. Those need to be very flexible and scalable. And then very importantly, data. You need a platform to do intense data analytics to enable your customer and get details from your operations to make effective decision making, because everything in a digital world needs to be run by data. All your decisions need to be fact checked, tested, experimented with. And so data is, as you can see, the golden thread between all of this. It's the lifeblood of an organization in a digital economy. And business alignment's highlighted red because if we're not aligning IT to business, there's no ways we'll ever be able to do anything digitally, because that's where most of our digital competency comes from. What we need to be doing is merging the two worlds a lot more than they've ever been, and having business and IT folks becoming one in a sense, and cross-skilling and better understanding each other's environments and finding a frame of reference that they can both understand and engage on. So the secret sauce here is not any one of these pillars. It's the way in which we are combining these to provide the ultimate experience for consumers and customers. Dadir, the other author on Leading Digital, has said, the point is like a car's driving experience is based on all the car's elements. It's the steering wheel, it's the tires, it's the engine, it's the leather interior, the smell of that leather. You cannot just offer tires and a steering wheel and then claim that you are delivering any form of experience, because it's how everything works together to provide that experience. It's not those individual components themselves. Right, so here we're going to be looking at those 5 and effective ways to drive success in any digital transformation program. So, David, I don't know if the slides are coming up for you just yet, but it's talking about reading your organization's strategy.
That's good. I'll speak to them anyway. So, of course, I have a nice backup set of slides here so they could follow just in case this happened. So the first step, now, please, I need to be clear about this. These are quick and they're effective. I did not, and neither did Richard, neither of us said that they were easy steps. If you do them, they can be quick and do not turn any of these steps into a major project. Use them to enhance your current strategy. First, the first step is this: read your organization's strategy. It's amazing that people, so many organizations have strategies that are not accessible to the people who are actually managing the transformation. How do you know that your transformation, that you're transforming the practices, the products, and the process and so on, and the tools of your organization in the right way, if you don't know what the strategy of your organization is?
Right, so it's important that you make sure that your strategy, you understand your strategy. You need to understand exactly what the strategic imperatives of the organization are. If we don't have that, we're really not going to, it's going to be very difficult to know exactly how you need to fine tune your organization so that you're able to provide the expected value. I mean, who are your consumers? Who are your actual customers? Who are your actual competitors? I mean, that's all information that's typically embedded in your strategy. And it, as David's alluding to, it's amazing how many people don't actually have or haven't read any of that information and don't have those insights. And so we need to make sure that we have a clear understanding of who those people are, because when it comes to creating your digital strategy, you're needing to really understand your customers and your customer base so that you're able to really tie into the value that you're wanting to deliver them, and given the digital experience that they're looking for. The other thing is that David's going to be pointing to here very importantly is, why do a lot of these projects fail? You know, we get a strategy, we get the actions that we have to take, and then we go off and we start to try and drive them. And the problem is that they don't seem to be getting us any closer than what we're wanting to be, because we typically are trying to. Are you there, David?
And what I was about to explain was what happens when you do not read the organization's strategy. Well, what tends to happen is this: you start out, there's an obstacle or a challenge that you're trying to deal with. You define it, you create a plan, and you define your objectives, and it looks great. You are going to solve this problem for your organization, whatever it is. It could be a self-help program for incident management. It could be a new process for delivering products faster. You get it in place and you start working on it. You plan it. You start building it. Look at that. You start flying. Oh, and everybody's really excited about this thing. It gets to the top of the curve when you finally put it into full production, and off it goes. Well, somehow, and we never understand why, the excitement about it kind of fades off. And you say, well, okay, I guess it's because maybe we didn't go far enough, maybe we didn't transform enough, maybe we need to add more functionality. So we do that, only to find that it fades away. There's no support for it, there's no funding for it. The next round of budget cuts come up, suddenly our project is on that list. What happened? Well, what happened invariably in many of these cases is that somebody asked the question, this is great. It made life a lot easier for certain groups in the organization, but it really didn't move the organization closer to where we need to be strategically. So it's really, really important that when you're doing transformative programs, it doesn't matter how small they are, make sure that you know whether they've got a organization. And I'll give you a very simple example. We were working in a manufacturing organization, and we were introducing a new set of services, IT services, and we were really excited about them. They were fantastic. We rolled them out to the factories. It was pretty expensive too, and they never caught on. Why? Because the chief operations officer who manages and oversees all of those factories had one primary strategic initiative, and that was to reduce waste. What was our program focused on? It was focused on producing products quicker. When we produced products quicker, there was a little bit more waste. It failed. We just didn't read the strategy. And it wasn't that the strategy was hidden from us. It was there. It's just we didn't read it. And I learned a really, really valuable lesson from that is always start with the strategy when you are defining anything that is transformative to the organization. All right. And then following on from that, the second part of this is, what happens when you do read the strategy? Well, first of all, you find your center. The strategy tells you what your purpose as an organization is, and tells you what the purpose of your project is within that strategy. You know who your customers are, and you know in detail what is driving them, whether those are internal or external customers. You really get a better understanding of who those customers are. And what Richard will tell you a little bit later on is, whenever you're defining services and experiences or things that are going to transform the experience, you always have to start with the customer and work your way back into the organization. So the other thing you understand is you understand what the pain points of those customers are, which you can translate very quickly into what are the jobs that need to be done. And when you understand what jobs need to be done, it's much easier for you to find the best way to get those jobs done and thus decrease the pain that those customers are experiencing. You can also demonstrate how you get those jobs done. It's much easier to do so because your message is relevant, your product is relevant, your process is relevant, whatever it is you're transforming is relevant to those jobs that need to get done. You also know who the competitors are, and you know what they're doing because this information is in the strategy. So you know what you're up against, and you know what you have to be better than. So the second thing that happens when you read the strategy is you get a better locus of control. This is a fancy way of saying, you you are in control of things or you're not in control of things, right? Where does your control come from? Well, for many organizations, their digital transformation program is external. It's, you need to do this because I'm telling you to do it, because we have to comply with the policies or the regulations or the, whatever it is. And so everybody gets into these programs and they're doing it because the control that's being imposed is from outside themselves. It's coming from some senior executives, it's coming from some regulatory organization. It could be anywhere, but the point is I'm doing something because I'm told to do it. It's very difficult to transform if that is the locus of control, if it's external. However, when you read the strategy and when you get people excited about the objectives of the strategy and how we're going to meet that strategy, it's a lot more likely that they're going to get on board and say, yeah, I get that. I understand that. I'm passionate about it. I will do anything it takes to make sure we do that, to make sure that we achieve that. And so you're shifting that locus of control from somebody telling people to do something to people being excited about that. And we're going to come a little bit later, we're going to come to this whole point about management and leadership. One of the key points, and we'll cover this again, one of the key points of leadership is not just to get budget, right? Richard mentioned sponsorship earlier. What this means is that you have to excite people, give them the vision, equip them with whatever they need, and then get out of their way. That is the role of a leader within these organizations, and it only happens when people own the objectives. Richard, back to you.
Perfect, thank you. So some of the important, so point two would be you have to narrow your scope. So there are a lot of people out there, they've got 1,000 different programs of work on the go to try and, they're throwing everything at the wall to seeing what sticks in terms of digital initiatives, and what will work. And the advice we're saying is it's best probably to narrow your scope there, because you're not going to get much from that exercise. You need to look at exactly what you need to be digital at. You don't need to be digital at everything. So just how digital do you need to be? Being fully digital is not necessarily the determining point for effective transformation. It is when we're using digital technologies in the right places and in the right way. That's what makes the difference. So digitalization, in other words, one single initiative of becoming digital. It could be automating a process. It could be creating a particular product. It costs time and money and human resources. And I'm sure for many organizations out there, this really spread rather thinly at the moment. So it's important to know precisely what you need to transform. And you need to have a very clear strategic intent and purpose, or your efforts will not have the required impact. They will rather be diluted or completely ineffective. And that talks back to the slide we had earlier on with David, where these initiatives sort of just disintegrate into nothing. And there are two primary ways in which you can start prioritizing and identifying the digital transformation initiatives you should be using. The first one is going on the offensive, and that's really being innovative and leading in the market. So when you understand your customers' jobs to be done, the work they're trying to get done, and the difficulty they may have in trying to get that job done, and the challenges they're having, you might find an innovative and novel way of using a piece of emerging technology or even current technology, just using it in a novel way that really addresses the issue that they're having, the challenge they're having, and really enhances the value they get and the experience they would have when they use your service. Now, when you couple that particular offering with a really great journey that the customer might go on when engaging with you, so from onboarding to support to offboarding to whatever it might be, if you're making sure that entire journey is streamlined and beautiful and highly effective and a really great experience the whole way through, I can assure you that you're going to keep these customers. They're going to want to carry on using you. And that's, those are the things that ultimately help you find ways to attract customers and retain customers with these unique offerings and great journeys. Then the other option is to play the offense. And sorry, to that point, again, we need to really understand our customer there. So you need to go and really research that, look at who is your customers, what are their pain points. You have to understand that as a starting point. The next thing is you have to play the offense. So what that means is you have to protect yourself from competitors' innovations or market moves. So you need to go and have a look at your competitors and understand who they are. Look at what new products and features they're bringing to the market, especially in a digital sort of sense. What are the experiences they're providing to their customers, and potentially yours, and the time frame it's taking for them to do this. And this is going to help you determine whether you need to either copy what they're doing or counteract the impact of those new services with other offerings you may have, to try and retain your customer base. Those are the two primary strategic objectives that you need to have, and those will tell you specifically what you need to start doing from a digital standpoint. Because if you understand your market from what your customers are using and how they want to engage, and what your competitors are doing, you'll start to get a better understanding as to what you need to do as an organization to effectively retain your customers. And the third point is you have to look for cracks in your current way of operations and bring polyfiller or spackle, anything that would fill a gap. And so you need in order to do, you'll find out, like, we've got these great new digital services we want to provide. We figure these are going to really help our customers and retain them. But now you need to have the next challenge is understanding what your current organizational capabilities are able to provide, and whether you've got the capabilities to deliver these solutions to the expected, deliver the expected experience, etc. And so you need to start by understanding what capabilities your organization and IT currently have, and the sort of a level of proficiency of each capability. Because from there you have to look at what's expected from your customer experience design. And I mean, for example, if you don't have a competency for customer experience and you don't design experiences, or you don't have a development team to build you custom applications and so forth, those are potentially gaps in your current operating model and capabilities in your organization. And those will then be capabilities you need to start looking at getting embedded into a target operating model, if you will, and you need to start getting those plugged in, and you need to start putting initiatives in place to start getting those capabilities there. And that's really what the essence of that digital transformation is about. It's not just getting that tool set out there to wow your customers. It's also about making sure that from an organizational perspective, you're shifting the organization to being able to deliver these experiences and tools effectively. Over to you, David. So make the change normal.
Yes, and as we get into that, just to reflect a couple of questions that came up in emails beforehand, and that is, what's the causes of many organizations failing at this? And one of the big reasons is because people try to go too big. They're trying to transform the entire organization all at once. Well, that's impossible. You're never going to do that unless you're starting from scratch. So, the one thing is figure out where you can make the biggest impact and go for that. And that's exactly what you've been saying, Richard. I think those have been extremely helpful. It's just narrow your focus. Focus on where you can fill gaps and take it from there. But I would also say at the same time, because you've been reading the strategy, you know what the big picture is. You can't just implement at the bottom, right? And fix a couple of operating procedures and hope that that's going to transform the entire organization over time. It doesn't work like that. You have to do both. You have to know the big picture, but then when you act on the individual highest impact areas first. So to that point, one of the other questions was, what are the 5 templates that you use? I don't know if they're 5, but I'll tell you what. Richard mentioned the operating model. That's a really important one. Your strategy and how to read your strategy is another very important one. And the third one I would say is the ability to map your services. And we talk, even from Itil version 3 days, we talked about a service portfolio, not a service catalog. A service catalog just tells people what services you offer. Talk about a service portfolio, which is where you can map everything that is involved in delivering a particular service. Now, if you can do that end to end, then you start getting a very good picture of where the gaps are and how to fill them. So that's another thing I would strongly recommend. Start mapping your services. Start coming up with you can call it a service portfolio, it doesn't really matter, but come up with a set of maps which show how your services and your business outcomes or your customers' outcomes are linked to the devices, the people that you use to deliver them. Now, making change, real. Making it part of the organization. the really big thing about transformational organizations is not that they transform. It's that they are used to the fact that when they walk into work that morning, there's a very good chance that things will not be the same as they were yesterday. Somebody asked a question, what do you see digital transformation in healthcare? Well, here's a really good example. You have some healthcare facilities that are really stuck in what they're doing and they will not deploy new technology. But you have the others who are using digital technology to do distance, consultations and so on. But what's happening there is that when people get into work in that morning, they know that things are going to be different because we're expanding the way our business works. We know and we expect that things will be different when we walk into work. And not only that, but we are encouraged as we are using these new ways of working to find weaknesses or look for new opportunities. And that is part of the culture of these organizations. Now, Netflix, who you all know very well, and I heard the story. I'm sure someone from Netflix will correct us if we're wrong on this, but back in the early days, they had this piece of software running around the organization. It was called the Chaos Monkey. And the Chaos Monkey had one job. It was to bring devices down randomly. And I thought, wow, that's irresponsible. How on earth what are they thinking? I mean, people depend on streaming their movies and stuff. And then I thought about it, and it was very clear. When you have a chaos monkey around, you have no idea what's going to happen next. You need to be prepared for anything. And that was a very strong part of that culture, that innovative culture, is that anybody and everybody in that organization knew that they had the ability to identify things that weren't working properly and figure out a way to get it working again. There were suites of report that so that they could be built into a longer process and so on. So used to the fact that to work, things may change. And I know that's not going to appeal to many people. Remember I said there are many parts of the organization that will be very routine. That's fine. There will always be people who will be very comfortable there. But make sure that it's understood that this is a transforming organization, that we are meeting these strategic objectives differently. And by the way, one of the very effective means, and here is the template if you like, is the objectives and key results. And we talk about it in the Itil book, which is where you take the strategy and you translate it into a project or a program for a specific team, and the results and objectives and metrics from that initiative are directly linked to achieving the strategy. It's a very good tool to use when you're doing digital transformation. Here's some ways you can empower people to be innovative and use cross-functional teams. Change your governance model. Sorry to use that word, but there's no way around it. Organizations need to be governed. There's nothing, however you interpret that, that's what's going to make the difference, right? If governance to you means rigid controls where everybody does as they're told, no questions asked, yeah, you're not going to transform very well. But if governance means to you, everybody has their eye on the same goal and they're all working towards it in a similar way and they're all playing their role effectively, you need a model that does that. And that typically comes through adaptive and responsive working models, and it comes through the kind of metrics that I've just mentioned as well. So that will help you to make change normal. The last step is to take the lead. Again, this is really important. Many digital transformations fail not because the projects were bad or because the solutions were bad or because they were not strategic. They fail simply because the wrong person was leading it. For example, early digital transformation programs appointed somebody that they called various things. One of the terms was Chief Digital Officer. And it was really exciting. These people were so excited. They got to play with all the new tools. They got to transform the organization. The only problem was they didn't have any authority at all. They were kind of a middle person between the business unit and the IT unit. And those two units weren't very good at talking to each other anyway. And now you've got a third person in there trying to force the issue. Really wasn't very comfortable for that person. Many of those organizations that went that road have kind of stopped that. Actually, who's responsible for transformation? It is the leader of the business. It is the leader of the technology that is being changed. So all of all of the stuff you've learned in Itil and DevOps and so on, wherever you're coming from, about how to get business people and IT people to talk to each other, absolutely critical, and a good leader understands that that is a very important thing to do. Now, very important, the CEO needs to be visibly active and engaged. We're not just talking about, hey, yeah, I'll sign off on the budget. Oh, yeah, I'll be the talking head at your kickoff meeting. No, they should be there. They should be actively engaged in following through when metrics are reported. They should be there when major phases are coming to a close to see and to show support. And they should be absolutely behind this. And that's where it has to start. In addition to that, we absolutely have to have project managers and architects. You cannot do this without them. But they shouldn't lead the team. You know, the leader of the team should be the leader of the business unit and the leader of the IT unit, and whoever else has authority of the area being transformed. Because they're the ones who provide the compelling vision. They're the ones who keep people excited and focused on the objectives. They don't direct, they enable. They remove obstacles. They provide the team with the tools they need. And then they get out of the way. They provide a safe working environment. Okay, that didn't work so well. Okay, let's try something else. It's a safe working environment. And it's that kind of leader. I know the term is often used, servant leadership. I think it's a bit overused and in many cases incorrectly used. But that's what we're talking about here. It means basically giving the people who are doing the actual work the tools they need to do it, encouraging them and letting them get on with it. Richard,
yeah.
To you for this last slide.
Thanks, David. So conscious of time, really to wrap this up, what we're saying is that there's no single initiative that makes digital transformation or an organization digital transform, and I'm hoping that message came through. There are many components to it, and it's the way in which all of these are incorporated and used that makes you effective at digital transformation, not a single new product or service that you're providing. And that this is typically an organizational wide initiative. So you need to ensure that it's evolving. Now, to be practical, an organization that doesn't have any automation and they automate a single process that's got a lot of impact on their customers, then yes, that's definitely going to be the right move, and it's definitely going to start moving you on that journey of digital transformation. But we need to make sure that it is linked very strongly to a strategy and a market play, or else it's just there's nothing wrong with becoming more efficient and getting better operational excellence, but none of that matters if we're not finding ways to keep our customers and win new customers. So doing things in isolation is a big no. Be careful of that. Make sure that we've got a cohesive approach across the organization and making sure that we get the most important success factors, which is people. People are the most important in this whole element, leadership and people. So we really need to focus our energies on making sure that we're getting people enabled and supported through this process. And I've got a slide up here for our contact details for anyone who wishes to engage with us further. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. I've got a podcast you can follow as well. You'll get the details on my LinkedIn page. And then just a last slide on the certifications available from Good eLearning. I don't know, Dave, if you're able to give an overview.
Yeah, absolutely. All I want to say on this slide is that Good eLearning does have a comprehensive suite of training programs. Many of the methods and tools that you've heard us talking about on this webinar, you can learn about more on their courses. And of course, all of their courses fully accredited, whether you're coming at it from Itil or whether you're coming at them from DevOps or whatever discipline, they are fully accredited. And I would strongly encourage them. I've worked with them, strongly encourage people who want to explore this further to take a look at their website and see what they can offer. So that being said, thank you very much to Good eLearning. Thank you very much to every one of you who participated. Just to say that all of the communication glitches were entirely my fault, but we won't get into that. And I do apologize for those. Thank you very much, everyone.
I can read them out. So Chris Bull said, can you comment on how these DT components apply to public sector transformation? Are all the core principles the same as the market-based examples, or are there any significant differences to bear in mind? And I think to answer that question, Chris, they're fundamentally the same. We're just dealing with citizens. So you'll be looking at citizens' experience. Sure, you might not be looking at winning market share and things like that, but you've got a a service to be providing to the citizens, and we need to keep up with the times. So I think that's the pressure that gets placed on the public sector to make sure that they're delivering effectively. And strategically in that sense, it's looking at how to do things more efficiently and applying new innovative ways of providing those public services. Maybe there's better cost models or better ways of changing behaviors, etc. Better ways of doing parking meters and doing them digitally. All of these things are still infused with the same pillars that were mentioned before. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, Richard, just one thing to add to that. Of course, the one thing that, the additional thing that does apply to public sector is, of course, the political aspect. Again, we said one of the most important aspects of this is people. And when you're dealing in the public sector, those people are very often politicians or appointees who come out of political backgrounds. And the agendas that they bring into those organizations with them can actually be a significant constraint in some cases, or in other cases, a significant enabler. And so, the politics of the organization will play a very important role, more important role within public sector organizations, typically than they do in private sector. What I've always seen and would continuously suggest, and I think you know this already if you work in the public sector, is you absolutely need that champion who goes into those stakeholders and lobbies like anything for the solution that you're working towards. I think lobbying in public sector organizations is hugely important skill.
I think the point was made there. And then the other one was around the, how does it address agile agility and what does digital transformation look like when we've been looking at agility? I think it was Kate who sent the message ahead of time. And the answer to that really is that agility is one of the aspects of digital transformation. We can't compete effectively if we, as an organization, aren't able to shift the way we're doing things very quickly and adapt to the market very quickly. Users' behaviors are changing a lot quicker. And so we need to be able to, adjust our operations and, create products and services in a very rapid way. And so agility is a very important component, and we definitely need to be making sure that we are agile in a digital economy, and that is definitely part of the makeup of a digital transformation organization.
So will you elaborate on your view on vision versus mission and strategic position? What is just management lingo and what is useful in your opinion?
Well, vision needs to be something that's really something that the problem with visions absolutely is that they can be very abstract, right? We need to find a way of getting visions that actually mean something to the organization, that are applicable immediately to the environments that we're in. So, I totally understand that some visions are far too abstract to being able to be of any use. So it's generally recommended that you start defining a vision for your digital transformation initiative that sort of maybe outlines what the future state of your organization might look like, and explaining that in a degree of detail that you can actually work towards. In terms of market position, I mean, that one's easy. That's really making sure that you understand what your competitors are doing and understand what your customer needs are, and understanding how you need to use your services to counter the play from your competitors, and of course what services etc. you're going to use to retain customers in certain segments. Like, which segments will you be targeting over other segments? How will you prioritize investment into a particular market space or a demographic or things like that? And that's really what a market strategic play would really outline. That's what it's about.
Okay, great. And we have one from Clarissa saying, in your experience, what have you found the most challenging aspect of digital transformation in your business?
It is the people. It's getting people and the digital skills they need in order to be able to effectively apply technologies, learn how to use the technology, and use them in a way that is centric to a customer, and apply the world of a customer and understanding that customer, and seeing how a technology might be able to, enhance that experience. And we all need to start becoming more technical and understanding the technology better in order to being able to do that.
Great. We have a question here. I'm not sure if this would have been kind of directed to David or not, but it says, how does the combination of Togaf, Cobit, Itil, and Pmbok work thoroughly with digital transformation strategy? And if it does, how can we make it real?
So this will be the last one I can do because I'm going to have to drop off as well. But yep. This is an important one because I wouldn't get too tangled up in the methodologies. If you're focusing on what your customers need and understanding your customers and their actual pain points, I would then understand what capabilities I'm missing or which capabilities aren't proficient enough. So if, for example, I don't have any agility in my organization and I need to start getting more agile, then I will go out and start looking at which methodology will help me to become more agile to address that problem. I wouldn't just embrace DevOps or embrace agile frameworks or any other framework for that matter, just for the sake of the framework as like a tick in the box. It needs to be tied to a strategic intent, or else you're just spending a lot of time and effort learning a methodology, which will help. I mean, they're tools that help us focus the mind. Beyond that, if we're not linking them to the strategic objectives we're trying to put emphasis on, then we'll end up getting ourselves lost and tangled up in, best practices, which is also not a good thing.
Okay, great. Thanks, Richard.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Okay, so I think that's the end of the webinar. Just a reminder that you can visit goodelearning.com. We have a range of free resources written by experts. You'll be able to access them completely for free.
Follow Good eLearning on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for regular free trials and Itil resources such as posters, articles, videos, and study guides.